Week, we will discuss how much money you should have left in your bank. Now, you all know the answer to this, or at least you think you do. It's between 3 to 6 months of your savings. Well, that's somewhere where you can start, but that is just the start. And I actually think quite a lot of financial advisors or websites that cover this kind of material are a bit lazy, actually, and they sort of stop at that point, and that's not enough. I'm just going to provide a few different reasons why you may want some money in the bank and really explain why this is a personal choice and you should not just be following those basic guidelines, as you may want more or potentially even a bit less in your bank account. Okay, so sit back, get your banking app out, and we will discuss how much money you should have in your bank. So the first factor that this is one that all the financial advisors do cover off is saving for a rainy day. So rainy day is something like I need to pay for hospital bills or something along those kind of lines, or you're off work and don't have don't have some kind of insurance policy that might cover it, and so you may need say 3 months of your normal working bring home pay to cover your daily expenses. And that's right. Everyone should probably aim to have, say, at least 3 months in the bank account, or at least get access to that pretty quickly if needed, because you never know what is going to be round the corner. Now, some people will sleep better at night with more in their bank account, and if they have that luxury, then absolutely fantastic. Push that to 6 months, push that to 9 months. Some people may not have any concerns at all. They may think, well, you know what, I'll be fine. And if that's the decision they take, all I would probably recommend is that as long as they've got access to some funds elsewhere, then to be able to call upon in an emergency, then great, they can carry on that basis. But there's other factors and there's other reasons why you may want some money in the bank, and I think these are less considered because I think a lot more people live for the now. It's a now generation, as I think the Black Eyed Peas song goes. So the next one is instead of saving for a rainy day, is actually the opposite, and that's saving for a sunny day. Yay! And what I mean by that is that you may have something planned in, say, 2 to 3 years' time, something like a new kitchen, or maybe a wedding for your daughter that you want to kind of assist with, or son, or anything else along kind of those lines. And you may want some money sort of tucked away because there is a likelihood of that sunny day happening. So this is a lot harder because with a rainy day, you definitely want it there, but sunny day is some way off in the distance. So if it was if it was in 2 weeks' time, then obviously you'd be keeping that money there because you'd want to be using it. But if it's in 3 or 4 years' time, then what should you do with it? And this is a bit trickier because those who are more risk averse may be saying, "Whoa, I'm not touching it." But as long-term listeners or viewers of this Financial Freeman podcast will know, the risk with that is inflation. Because if you've got £50,000, and obviously that would be fantastic, lying around in a bank account, the problem at the moment is that you're losing 4% every single year on that amount. Now, let's just say it was 3 years that was in the account for, so only a short space of time, but let's say it was 3 years, that would probably be about 15% compounded annually. So you're losing 15% of that value. Now, that is £7,500 over those 3 years. Now, if you needed that £50,000 and you were going to spend that in 3 years' time, well, suddenly it's gone down to £42,500, which you may accept. You may say, fine, that's what I know is going to happen, but at least in 3 years' time, all things being equal, I should be left with the £50,000, but its value will be £42,500, and I can live with that, and that's great. But you may not want to accept that. You may say, that's not really good enough for me. I want to try and find a way, if I can, to at least be level with inflation and possibly even beat it. So then you may want to start looking for investments that are suitable for such a time period. Okay, now that may not be property. We are obviously big advocates of property, but 3 years is quite a short period of time to be investing in an asset which is really mostly beneficial over the long term. Okay, so yes, you could do a flip with that, but if you're not that experienced, it could still potentially go wrong. And if you do think you may need that money, that might not be the best idea. So you may be looking for something like a sort of more defensive fund, which is something that may give you a return for those 3 years, which will hopefully be in line with inflation. You may want to lend the money to a friend who invests. You may get a much better return than you would get in the bank. There's a number of sort of different options, but it may not be that you want to just keep it in the bank. Okay. Now, the final reason, or there's sort of two reasons, but we'll combine them into one, is that you may want to take advantage. You may be savvy of any falls in the market. Now, this works two ways. The first is that if you have a good feeling that, let's say, the stock market is just too high, so rewind the clock back to January of 2020, lots of analysts were saying it's too high, the market is too high. You possibly want to be a bit more in cash and a bit more risk off. And what I mean by that is that you may have a lot of money in the stock market, but if you feel it's just gone up and up and up, which it had at that point for a long time, it felt like it was due a correction. Now, no one could call that the virus was going to happen to such an extent and that there would be such a fall in the market, but analysts have always got to be wary of such an event happening, and quite a few were beginning to bring cash off the table. Bring cash off the table and keeping it in cash, some of their investments in cash, so that they were ready to go in case there was a fall. And lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. So fast forward then the clock to sort of March time, to March 2020, and those people that had cash could then take advantage of the fall and get involved, and they then received a good bounty because they could buy those shares, whatever they were invested in, at a much, much lower level. Okay, so it's not just about having cash for the rainy day, it's also about having cash for the sunny day. And it's also about having enough cash for when there is a market correction. Okay, now how much and when and the timescales is all very much a personal choice. I'm not a financial advisor, but I would encourage you to go through your bank, go through your personal circumstances, work out when you might need the money, work out when you should be investing, when you should be not, and speak to someone if you're not sure about these decisions, because they could have a huge impact on your financial future. And it's very important that you don't just do nothing. Remember Jack the Butcher, who just kept the money in the account forever and ever and ever, and unfortunately it would dwindle down to a really low sum. What we're saying is have the cash in the bank as long as there is a plan. Don't be like Jack. Don't leave the money in the bank forever, but have a plan with it, and potentially actually leave a lot more than some of the financial advisors may have you believe. Okay, so I hope that's been helpful. Please give a like or subscribe if it is. And just please remember that the content of this podcast is for general information purposes and not a recommendation to act. Please contact us or a financial advisor if you want to discuss further. My contact details are gary.financialfreeman@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Goodbye for now.